Welcome everyone to the April 20th City Council work session. Welcome to everyone here and those at home. And actually we today have requested something of our Sustainability Commission, and they're here in response to our request. So we have welcomed them and glad they're here. So the Sustainability Commission is first up, and the staff person is Babe O'Sullivan. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and members of Council. I'd like to introduce members of our Sustainability Commission who are here to talk with you today. Our Vice Chair, Josh Bruce, will be addressing you, and we've welcomed other members to the conversation as well, including Howie Benet, Steve Newcomb, Sean Bowles, Rusty Rexius, and of course, Councilor Zelenka also serves on the commission. We're hoping Josh Scope would also be able to join us today, so we'll bring him to the table when he arrives.
Great.
But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Bruce to present his remarks.
Great, thanks. So first of all, on behalf of the full Sustainability Commission, I want to thank you, Mayor, thank you, Council, for really the opportunity to speak to you today about Envision Eugene. We're hoping that we can kind of get to a conversation sooner than later, so I'm actually going to kind of read some remarks here and get through the presentation piece as soon as possible so that hopefully we can have some dialogue. Last August, we brought our work plan to you, and you asked the Commission to weigh in specifically on the results of this important planning issue. Since that time, we've had several Commission members, including Rusty and Sean, who have been directly involved with the Envision Eugene process, Councilor Zelenka as well. And as a Commission, we've reviewed and discussed at length the pillars and strategies that have been proposed. We see our purpose in being here before you today as to provide you with some general comments about Envision Eugene from our perspective, and also to offer some specific recommendations and things to consider when evaluating the individual pillars. So first, some general observations. As you're all aware, this is really a significant moment for Eugene. It's an opportunity for Council to embody the vision of a better Eugene, a time for you to think beyond your current constituencies to the constituencies of the future, and to shape Eugene as a more sustainable community. Through the adoption of the city's sustainability principles in 2000, the creation of the Sustainability Commission in 2007, and the endorsement of the Community Climate and Energy Action Plan in 2010. And I would also include in that the goals that the Commission has brought to you that you've also adopted. You've really affirmed sustainable development goals for the City of Eugene. This is an important opportunity to not only realize those goals, but to build that future for our community. We ask that you continue to explicitly consider the carbon, fossil fuel, waste reduction goals you've adopted, and that you use them to inform the Envision Eugene decisions that you make. There is substantial agreement among members of the Sustainability Commission and members of the public that have spoken before us over the last 3 years that Eugene's future should be one that's less dependent on the automobile, that the city should be more compact, that we should facilitate and encourage mixed-use neighborhoods that support community connectedness, different social and economic strata, provide access to a variety of housing and employment opportunities. We see many of these concepts reflected in the Envision Eugene materials that are before you. We also agree that that there should be an emphasis on corridor development and compact urban form. This aligns with the essential nexus between transportation and land use that we were before you last year to talk about. The approach really links with the overall mission of the Sustainability Commission and a long-term view for Eugene. Planning for climate change and energy uncertainty is a critical factor in that land use transportation decision and should not be relegated to a separate pillar. And we've provided staff with comments about that in the past few months. It needs to be embedded throughout the framework and should really inform where and how we grow as a community. The long-term view of a compact, sustainable community needs to be preserved at each step in the development and the implementation of the Envision Eugene framework, and that's an important piece that I'll come back to when I talk about specific pillars. The routine decisions and plans that are made by staff, that's really where the rubber hits the road and where the stuff needs to be embedded. Implementation is where the critical decisions will be made, and you should not assume that the generalized strategies presented in Envision Eugene will specifically support the goals that you've adopted when they're implemented. So I'm going to say that again. Implementation is where the critical decisions are going to be made, and you should not assume that the generalized strategies that are in the Envision Eugene document will support sustainability, right? At this point in time, a lot of them are relatively general in nature, and depending on what decisions you make in terms of how they're implemented, could vary in terms of whether or not they support sustainability or not. And when we get into the pillars, I'll talk specifically about some examples. Part of the Sustainability Commission's task is to facilitate deliberate change that will benefit current and future generations of Eugenians. The overwhelming conclusion from a number of angles, Envision Eugene, local energy security, Senate Bill 1059 implementation, public health, national shifts in the housing market, long-term economic prosperity, and ecological services, just to name a few, is that we're in for change. And that it will be more comfortable if our planning is deliberate and accounts for that change and that uncertainty. All of the pillars are interconnected from our perspective. I think that's in some ways an opportunity, in some ways a challenge of looking at the issue in terms of pillars, and something you guys should consider. But a decision or strategy you pursue for one part of the city will have profound and long-lasting implications throughout. And so now some comments on specific pillars. And we'll go through all 7. So first, the pillar around providing ample economic opportunities for all community members. The Sustainability Commission agrees that every effort should be made first and foremost to accommodate that need within the urban growth boundary. Understanding that there's some specific challenges to industrial land and things like that, we would encourage you to think about any expansion of the urban growth boundary for industrial land, that include alignment with objectives for alternative active transportation options and sustainable infrastructure development. And also that industrial development be supported by the outcomes of the Sustainable Business Initiative that really, got the commission started in the first place. It has to emphasize what we do well. It should build on existing business clusters. And you should remember that from a triple bottom line perspective, long-term retention of industry is needed to provide stable jobs and those sorts of things. Over time, you should define and quantify the economic burden or opportunity posed by transportation and housing options so that we can see the costs of sprawl and the benefits of smart growth more clearly as policymakers and citizens. With respect to the pillar on affordable housing for all income levels, general consensus is that housing affordability should not be defined just in terms of multifamily rental housing needs. But it needs to include opportunities for a true mix of affordable housing types, including single and multifamily homeownership, single and multifamily rental, single room occupancy, assisted living, group quarters, etc. Our sort of view of the affordable housing pillar is that it seems to be a little bit weighted and doesn't include maybe a broad enough spectrum. This is tied to the current issue with school closure and demographic trends in neighborhoods, and without a strong mix of housing types, we really force our hand in terms of school closures and those kinds of things. In short, we need a diversity in the population demographics of our neighborhoods and the portfolio of renters and homeowners to provide for long-term health of schools and the neighborhoods that support them. And we could extend that not just to schools, but to mixed-use strategies and other things that are embedded in Envision Eugene. Last, with respect to that one, if expansion of the urban growth boundary is needed for housing, we would encourage you to think about that new development be done in line with the 20-minute neighborhood model and should be zoned for a mix of housing types, mix of uses, and things along that line. With respect to the pillar around climate change and energy uncertainty, I've already spoken briefly about that, and the Sustainability Commission has provided input to staff on the contents of this pillar in its current form. In short, it satisfies most of our hopes, but we think it needs to be not a pillar, but really embedded throughout the Envision Eugene approach. The pursuit of 20-minute neighborhoods is a great strategy, but it relates at least as much to the other pillars and themes of affordability, compact development, efficient transportation, enhanced neighborhood livability, and economic opportunity as it does to energy and climate, which again is why we think it needs to be more infused throughout. The overlap between energy and climate issues and other issues speaks to the problems with sequestering energy and climate concerns in a single isolated pillar. Regarding the pillar for promoting compact urban development and efficient transportation options, obviously this is a pillar that we support. But to achieve this, we want to make sure you remember that taking the next step on land use and transportation means providing more choice. To achieve greater densities in urban development, people are going to need more transportation choice in the form of walking, biking, and transit. We need to be thinking about urban spaces that lower cost, health-promoting modes provide the safest and most convenient options for everybody that's living within the neighborhood. And this is really where MX comes into play. We see that compact urban development and build out of MX as being really inexplicably linked. Without MX, we feel like you're really going to be forced, if not this round, certainly into future round, into expansion of the urban growth boundary. And if corridor development is going to be the strategy, which we also support, council will need to fully commit to multimodal transportation options along all key existing and proposed east-west and north-south transportation corridors. So to be clear, the foundation of this pillar, talking about urban development and efficient transportation, is really predicated on full build-out of a BRT or BRT-like, it doesn't have to be that, transportation system. With regard to the protect, repair, and enhance neighborhood livability pillar, we see neighborhood compatibility as not being the same thing as no change. Diversity in our neighborhoods can be compatible with neighborhood character, and that gets back to the comment I made before. It's all about how you do it and how you implement it. Triple bottom line conversation around the Envision Eugene process suggests that changing the first strategy in that pillar is pretty critical. That's the pillar that's tied to infill compatibility and standards and opportunity citing. From where we sit, neither of those have been really fully vetted. We don't exactly know how they would be implemented in the long run. And instead, you should think about linking the strategy to to what city council adopts for those programs, not what's been developed by the respective task teams. So in thinking about infill compatibility standards and opportunity citing, think about ways to rework those concepts to be more progressive and frame density in terms of positive objectives to be achieved, not as prohibitions or restrictions as it's currently worded. And I believe in the background materials that came with the agenda item summary on this item, the triple bottom line analysis that was done includes specific comments about this strategy. In terms of implementation, really feel like these need to be vetted through a triple bottom line framework because without a broader view, again, you may not get the infill results that you're thinking you're going to get. The pillar about protecting, restoring, and enhancing natural resources, the pillar doesn't really put protection, restoration, enhancement in terms of opportunity. And that would be a suggestion that we would make to you. Natural resources are more than just attractive assets that make the community a nice place to look at. When used and managed right, they can act as functional infrastructure assets to the city and provide long-term economic benefit, health benefit, et cetera. They can reduce capital construction and long-term maintenance costs, and for a community that's already struggling to maintain aging constructed infrastructure, natural systems can provide many of the same services, many of the same benefits for less cost. Finally, provide for adaptable, flexible, and collaborative implementation. In a lot of ways, I mean, we had this discussion, there's, I don't know, a lot of things we can say, but when we chatted about how to respond to this, we talked about putting it in terms of resilience. Because of the uncertainty, because of the change that we know our community and communities really all over the world are going to face, we need to be putting adaptability, flexibility, and collaboration in terms of long-term resilience. So I'm in the natural hazards business, and we're getting constant reminders that best laid plans can go out the window when you're faced with kind of catastrophic disaster, right? So this is an opportunity to ensure that we don't implement the vision in a way that limits our ability to bounce back from future impacts on the system. And those could be social impacts in terms of unrest. They can be natural in the form of floods or earthquakes or things like that, or really economic, right, in terms of what we're facing today with recession and who knows what may come in the future. So many of the long-term trends that concern the Sustainability Commission are not easily discernible with today's data. However, these trends will likely become more visible and understandable over time, which is why we need to have a city that can really move and adapt and have some bounce and some give in terms of how it's going to address and deal with these things. Envision Eugene should, in some form, become an ongoing conversation, and our information, that is our city's official shared understanding on energy, climate, transportation, and housing trends, are all likely to require updating more often than every 5 to 10 years. So in summary, we see many things that we like in the pillars and in the Envision Eugene process overall. However, there are many implied assumptions and unknowns embedded in some of the strategies that, from a sustainability perspective, could either support or erode progress towards the city's sustainability goals, depending on how they're implemented. I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to address you. Look forward to, hopefully, some conversation. And we do hope that the City Council will continue to call on the Sustainability Commission for our perspective as this and other related processes, such as MX or transplant update, such as those come before you. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I've got Mike and Andrea in the queue, and Alan. I'll make a couple comments first. I want to say I think that is, you've always done thoughtful presentations. That may be the most thoughtful presentation that you've given, which is not to give us general directions, but to really respond to something very authentically and to ask us to respond to our community goals in a very authentic way. And things that I heard in this is that you're asking us to think more deeply with more connectivity, think about how things actually happen on the ground as we make our decisions. Think about the present, but think about the future at the same time. And I do think this is going to call for some back and forth as we go through specific things and we probe them with the things that you've brought up. That we'll probably have some back and forth between council deliberation and recommendations or from the Sustainability Commission. So I just think this is sort of the beginning of what I hope will be an ongoing series of thoughtful conversations that help us do the best job we can as a council for this community. So thank you very, very much. Mike, you're next.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate everybody's work very much. And I know that all of you are volunteers and work very hard at this, and it's appreciated. It helps us make more thoughtful and wise decisions when we get through this Envision Eugene process. I noticed under the final, excuse me, under the final pillar here, you recommend that we consider an important trend in climate migration. We accepted the county's numbers that we'll have 34,000 new residents in the course of the next 20 years. I'm sensing here, and from other presentations I've seen, that you think it'll be a bigger number.
I don't think that was our intent in putting that in there. I think really the intent around the last pillar is to think of it in terms of uncertainty and unknown, right? Because of the way the state land use program works in the state, cities use county coordinated population projections. Okay. It could be 34,000, it could be 20,000, it could be 50,000. And I think the point is, there's paths that you can go down that build resilience into a system that could allow you to accommodate that if you need to. And there's paths that kind of lock you into ways that make it a lot more challenging in the long run to be able to accommodate those uncertainties. As a commission, I don't think anybody's here to suggest that the number's wrong, but more to think about the decisions you make outside the context of a fixed number that may or may not actually
build the system out of rubber rather than concrete.
Exactly.
I got it.
Let me interject very briefly around it. This really is, I think, more in that kind of comment that we have in this is more intended to inform this seventh pillar, where we're saying we need to monitor the consequences of implementing Envision Eugene across time. And part of that means tracking population estimates, and one of the drivers for that may be climate mitigated immigration.
Right. Okay. I happen to agree with you very much that we ought to be tracking this as close to real time as possible, and that we ought to be doing more to adjust as we go than the 10-year model that we've been presented with.
One of the consequences of Envision Eugene is that at the request of the manager, there's a technical resource group that is assisting the staff in developing a monitoring plan for Envision Eugene. So expect to hear more about that.
Excellent. Okay. With regard to the first pillar here, I'm seeing your recommendation as accommodate all industrial lands within the UGB. Did I read that?
And that's the unfortunate thing about bullets that only have a couple words. I think what I said was we would support, first and foremost, trying to accommodate need within the existing urban growth boundary. So to the extent that you can, obviously you want to look there first. It's a look within before you look without strategy. What I said in my comments was that we recognize, I think, as a commission that you may not be able to do that, and you may need to go outside, and that may make sense. If you do, though, from a sustainability perspective, the city should, go back to what we learned out of the Sustainable Business Initiative and really do it, accommodate that need in a way that's mindful of what our strengths are of green infrastructure and how to facilitate that.
Sure.
And so that was the purpose of that.
The ECLA process identified that we need 1,800 acres of residential for the next 20 years and that we need 400 acres of commercial for the next 20 years. We've kind of talked about the idea that maybe we can accommodate all of the commercial within the existing UGB. I would find it, I think, surprising if we were to suggest that we could do that with residential, and I think you've allowed for that in your point here about when you have to go out there. Your recommendation is that we consider that in a 20-minute neighborhood nodal fashion. So are you suggesting then that in those sort of multi-use center type models that we would build outside the UGB or that we would plan for, that we should then be planning for commercial land in those spaces as well?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean that when we had when we talked about how we were going to respond to that pillar specifically, it certainly doesn't make sense that you would pursue a mixed-use strategy within the current urban growth boundary, and then simply stop when you get out there.
Well, that's kind of what.
I think that is an important thing to point out, because I don't know that within that pillar and within the specific strategies, it accounts for and we're not talking like big box commercial, right? It's in the context of the strategies that are proposed to move forward. And in the context of a 20-minute neighborhood, what kind of commercial do you need in that neighborhood to support it? And linking it specifically to industrial land,
Right.
how can that expansion really be mutually supportive? And so it doesn't continue a trend of residential here, industrial way over there,
Right.
and some commercial in the middle.
I would tend to agree with that, and that's why I was surprised to see the recommendation for zero commercial outside the UGB. I would think we would certainly need some. The interesting thing to me, too, is when we talk about compact urban development, and we talk about this often, about building densely in the core. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the clock here to see how much time I have. We talk about building densely in the core. Does the Sustainability Commission ever talk about what the core of our community actually is? What's the distance from smack dead center downtown that you would consider the core of our downtown?
How many digits? Significant digits?
Yeah, I don't know that we've had a specific conversation about a definition of core.
Yeah, we
hear a lot about that, the importance of building up in the core of our downtown and building as densely along corridors as we can. I'm just interested if anybody has any kind of idea about what they think the core of our downtown actually is.
I think that's going to be in the eye of the beholder. I think what's important to say, though, is that corridors, densification along corridors and having genuine mixed use along corridors is still a dramatically underutilized strategy. So I think that could keep us busy for some time. And we have maybe more clearly identifiable and identified transportation corridors than we do an urban core where there's a line on a map. And
So your suggestion is that we not build so densely in the core?
No, not at all. But I think there's going to be enough overlap between core and transportation corridors that's a pretty good sense of direction.
Cool.
I think what you ask is this is something for council to discuss and to present to the community. I think people have different ideas.
Well, I'm actually looking for the Sustainability Commission who's doing work to help us analyze this other process and to help us analyze this information and to give us an appropriate lens and framework by which we want to look at this information. I'm asking for your assistance to say what is the core from your perspective.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. If you want to answer, I'm out of time.
Well, I mean, I was up on the Butte two weekends ago with my kid, and I was actually struck looking down at the central core of our city. And when you look at it from up there, we've got a lot of real estate above us that's very underutilized. And I think it was Paul Farmer, our former PDD director, that said some of the most efficient transportation you can have in a city is an elevator, right? And so in terms of thinking about it from that perspective, my background's in land use plan. I would encourage you guys not to think about a single core either. I mean, nodal development by its premise thinks about, you have pockets of more compact and densified development, but that doesn't have to be relegated to one part of the city, certainly. I mean, obviously our downtown, we have more opportunity than we would somewhere else, but that mixed-use development, nodal development is predicated on centers of activity, multiple. So I don't know if that helps you, and maybe we should have a conversation at the commission level about what that would mean. My perspective, I don't know. For you guys, is that how important it is?
Please, ma'am.
And I'm just going to say that we have about 15 minutes more for this discussion, so you won't get quite as much discussion as you'd probably like to get, but we'll try to get around this as much as we can to give everybody a chance. Andrea, you're
As
next.
usual, I have just a couple short and sweet comments. In the pillar with affordable housing for all income levels, I was curious if there was a discussion around schools, because even though 4J is receding in numbers, there are other districts in our footprint that we have to concern ourselves with, which is Bethel, which has property outside the UGB, which, they're looking forward to add a high school on. And I'm just curious if that came up in a conversation or not.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say a majority of the conversation around corridor development and really mixed-use development was included schools as a fundamental piece. If you do corridor development and it doesn't allow for, families and different types of households, what does that do to the schools in those areas? And also, I think the comments that I made, and maybe it makes sense for us to submit these, babe, in their full form rather than in the bulleted form here, because I think you miss a lot of the content, that our existing neighborhoods, right, in terms of our development pattern so far, has really been why we're seeing exactly the school closure pattern that you're talking about, because we have single demographic that, school-age children leave, but people stay there. And what we need is not only mix in terms of type, but mix in terms of income levels and social strata and the rest.
And the other comment I wanted to make was about the 20-minute neighborhood, the importance of 20-minute neighborhoods. Now, I'm going to just ask this question for your answer, obviously. So are you talking about a walking 20-minute neighborhood or a driving 20-minute neighborhood?
Not driving.
I believe in the context,
Okay.
yeah. And
I think that's kind of a given, but just kind of wanted to bring it up because, no matter if you're looking to have,
Springfield.
I can go to Springfield in 20
neighborhood,
minutes
yeah.
from my place sometimes. But so where I live on the west side, you can't get to any of the amenities that you would need to live
Yeah.
if you lived in West Eugene. If
Exactly.
you lived in the Four Corners area, there is nothing within 20 minutes to go shopping for clothes or shoes or groceries. If you want to have a beer or something, there's plenty of those opportunities. But so I just kind of have a concern about how that plays in when we're looking at the pillar around protect, repair, and enhance neighborhood livability. How do we obtain that goal in neighborhoods that are underserved for those types of services?
Well, right, and I think that's why in my comments I said from our perspective, compatibility doesn't mean no change, right? You can have a range of different types of uses, maybe that don't exist in a neighborhood now, but that can still be compatible, not only with what's there today, but with what could be there tomorrow.
Well, I just thank you for that. I just want to make another comment. Is I really appreciate the mayor's leadership on and Alan's on this whole discipline of thinking, because this really wasn't something that I was truly excited about, but I can see how it really makes sense when we talk about the limited resources that we have in the world today, and how do we continue the level of comfort in living that we have all gotten used to with less, and make sure that we ensure that we have some for our future. So I just really appreciate all the work people have done on this.
Alan, you're next.
Yeah, I also want to add my voice to the chorus of people thanking you for this thoughtful and way of looking at it, and definitely make sure we get the written comments. Also to compliment Josh in particular, because he's going to leave the commission. He's not going to re-up, so we'll definitely he'll be missed. And I really like the way that you posed this, because it talks about it in terms of having us look at it in more of a future context and the longer term context with the interconnectedness of all these issues. The pillars help us understand it, but it all gets integrated together. And so one of the things I had a question about was you say that we should have the climate change and energy uncertainty pillar not be a pillar, but have it be embedded in all of the pillars. So, how would you actually do that? What would be your suggestions about that? Anybody have any comments?
I guess I'd want to be clear, and we talked about this in the commission meeting and subsequently. We don't want to launch a long new process of wordsmithing a document that's in the home stretch. That's never popular. But I guess, dealing with the structure that's there.
Since you put it on the table.
But yeah, exactly. I think the point is more to say that when we looked through a climate and energy lens, when we looked through a broader sustainability lens, there were things in all the pillars, right? That some of the separation was a little bit artificial, and that's okay for the sake of creating a coherent document that has some division, so you can go piece by piece. But for example, it would be, from a policy perspective, tragic if you walked away thinking that the 20-minute neighborhood was a climate and energy strategy. Well, actually, the 20-minute neighborhood might be an affordability strategy, first and foremost. It might be an economic development strategy. It's a way for the community as a whole, for people to be spending a smaller share of household income on transportation, a way for people to be healthier. Well, those things aren't, climate and energy per se. They might be about broader economic and social and health issues. So I think it was more a call for integrated thinking, not an exciting new set of revisions to the document that would take a lot of time and effort.
I want to echo that. We're not suggesting that pillar be removed.
No.
But that in your thinking about the other pillars, recognize that any decisions with respect to any of the other pillars have to be anchored in the realities associated with climate and energy uncertainty.
One of the other things you talked about in the housing pillar, affordable housing pillar, is the single family. Maybe I think you said that it was weighted too heavily in towards single family, and that's the next big issue that's coming up in Envision Eugene. So, anybody have 2 bits about that?
Well, could I clarify? So I don't think I didn't intend to say that it was weighted heavily toward single family. The comments as written, I think what came out of my mouth was around the affordability pillar, and that a lot of the strategies in there are weighted toward rental in terms of affordability. And so as you think about that, at least from our perspective, again, getting back to the issue of the schools, of true mixed, not only mixed use, but mixed strata neighborhoods, putting all your affordability housing eggs in a rental market basket, that offers me and I think other people on the commission concerns. There's affordable home ownership. We have other non-rental affordable housing issues in terms of transition housing, and so that was the intent of that comment. I don't think we said anything in here about single family.
That currently is the current set of tasks before the technical research group of EE, taking a look at the housing mix issue. And downstream from that is finding a method by which we can evaluate the efficiencies associated with meeting that housing mix. The kinds of things that Josh is speaking to around vertically integrated, for example, a housing mix. And we don't know quite how we're doing that yet. We're still back in the technical research group, essentially reassessing the data sources and the analyses associated with the recommendations for the housing mix, which is a non-trivial thing. Like it.
Yeah, right. One more comment. I think the number one comment I hear from especially neighborhood folks about the pillars is the ICS and opportunity citing, and that where the heck did that go? It kind of was going full bore, and then it kind of just ground to a halt, and then it sort of got embedded in here, but and then everybody's saying, so what's the council going to do with that? And I think that's a very important part of what we need to think about in the next couple of months through this process.
Pat and then Betty. Pat?
Thank you. Josh, good presentation. I echo the mayor's sentiment on that. The thing that I wanted to talk about were, just the basic needs that we have addressed previously. And basic needs to me are always food access and shelter availability. And back in February, we had a discussion up in the atrium, over in the atrium, regarding housing mix specifically. And you touched on it, that we don't have enough diversity in housing mix, particularly as it lends itself to home ownership. And we've talked about different types of housing that are utilized in other communities that we aren't fully utilizing here. We talked specifically about row housing, for instance, where we have some small row housing developments that have occurred since the code changes has happened. But the ones that have shown up are relatively expensive and not necessarily lend themselves to entry-level home ownership. So you and I have had the discussion on that, and I'd like everyone to understand that really that has to be a discussion in the future, is how do we provide lower cost home ownership opportunities that aren't necessarily single house, single lot home ownership opportunities. And so I believe we had a pretty fruitful beginning of a discussion there, and I think that's what we had, was the beginning of a discussion that really needs to take us someplace into the future where people have an opportunity to go through what we used to call, and I think someplace we still call it the housing ladder, or the from emergency through the various steps to home ownership. So nothing I need to say beyond what we've already talked about, but just continue to increase the awareness that we need different housing types that allow people to afford that step of home ownership. And significantly, when we talk about affordable housing, the very first people we need to look at are the people who can't afford any housing, that are on or in transition between homelessness and emergency housing or transitional housing. So, thank you.
Do you want to say something?
Just quickly, I mean, I think that reinforces the point too that for you, for the council, how this stuff plays out is wholly dependent on the implementation strategies, right? Because you can talk about affordable, housing mix, but until you actually get down to the detail of, well, what does that mean, and does our current code in terms of row houses actually allow for it, or that's really what's going to that's really where the hard work for you guys, I think, is going to come into play. And that's why we point it out now, because the strategies and the pillars are going to kind of drive your choices in terms of implementation.
Thank you. Just a couple of 3 more seconds. I think it's important for me, as I begin to realize the significance of this commission, and the fact that quite often you have an opportunity to look into more detail than we as a council can look into more detail, and make very strong recommendations that we should listen to, particularly regarding, for me, for this issue in particular, the affordability of housing, and how do we make housing affordable for our kids and their kids and future generations of kids that are going to want to live in Eugene.
Eddie, did you want to say something, Josh?
Yeah, just very briefly, I want to make sure that we emphasize that when we talk about the affordability of housing, that we don't focus solely on the housing. And I think that was reasonable when we had the expectation of a long period of very low gas prices, just to take the easiest example. But we don't actually think that that's the case anymore. And so if that's not the case, then I think this all of a sudden the energy needed for transportation looms larger and larger over time as part of the affordability. You used to be able to live farther and farther away and get something that was more affordable. That's no longer the case. That should push us toward thinking about the 20-minute neighborhood as an affordability strategy in a number of ways. I also think it's important to say that an even larger share, larger than transportation, larger share of gross national product is spent on health care, and we have a number of health care crises that are actually related to our transportation patterns. I mean, as a society, we don't get enough exercise. I'm not saying that you should maybe strip people of their cars in order to force them to walk and bike everywhere, but I do want to say that when walking and biking is not a viable option, when you haven't actually made it an option, then all of a sudden there is no transportation choice. People are, in most situations, forced to use a car. That sounds like a health issue, but that's an affordability issue. That's an economic issue for the community as a whole. So I think these are key, and I think these will not necessarily be brought up to the fullest extent in the transportation system plan revision that's happening. So I think it'll be incumbent upon you to prod that group as well to say, hey, how are you dealing with these integrated land use and transportation issues and some of these health issues as well?
Thank you, Josh, for adding that.
Eddie?
Thank you. I have a few seconds, right? We're almost through with this. I've been saying this for 14 years, but inclusionary zoning is a good thing to have a mix of incomes in housing. Soon after I started talking about it, and I don't think this was a result, but the legislature passed a law prohibiting cities from having inclusionary zoning. But I think we should try to get that law repealed or changed. But if you have a mixture of type of expensive, of value in housing, whether it's an apartment building or a housing development, then you can have a mixture of incomes. And a lot of houses could be much smaller than they are. We've had a trend in recent years for the mansions, which are impossible to heat and cool and everything else. But if people can live in much smaller houses than they're living in, and they can live without fancy carpet and dishwashers and lots of other things that are considered a part of a house now. And if you include things of that sort, whether it's apartments, they can be right near, and there's not the stigma of living in a low-income place if everything's mixed together. So there are lots of good benefits, I think, from inclusionary zoning. Infill compatibility, you've already talked about that, but you seem to be saying it's not a good thing, Josh.
Yeah, and let me clarify. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. What I'm saying is I don't know if we know if it's a good thing or not, right? I mean, from what I understand, Council has put forth, 4 infill compatibility standards-related changes, one of which we talked extensively about at the commission level that I wouldn't say unanimously, but at least some of us don't think is particularly sustainable. So if you're thinking about infill compatibility standards, what we're asking, not that they're a bad thing, but that we're asking you to vet them through a TBL screen so you make sure you're getting what you want to get out of them. Some compatibility measures may be compatible from a neighborhood perspective, at least from parts of a neighborhood's perspective, but from a sustainability perspective, they won't meet your sustainability goals.
Well, I think it's really important that we consider compatibility. The people who already live in a neighborhood should have the right to continue to have the kind of neighborhood they bargained for. For example, things like height. If you have a neighborhood of 1-story houses and someone comes in and builds a 3-story house in the middle of them, it's not compatible.
How does that fit with the...
Just a very quick response. I don't think, I'm quite sure we're not advocating for infill incompatibility standards. I think the point is just to say that the OS and ICS processes were very focused on particular issues in particular areas before we just sweep them into a citywide plan for 20 years. I think there's additional work to do. That's all. And there's, none of this stuff is going to have legs if we're not creating neighborhoods that people want to live in and that people can afford to live in. So I agree completely with the general spirit of those comments.
And also if they have to sell the house, that they can still afford to sell it. Mm-hmm. I know a case where someone has a really nice house with a beautiful yard such as it is, but right next to it is this tall bare wall that's been built since, and the house is not selling. And that's important too, to protect people's investments. Mm-hmm. Thank you, that's all.
So we're going to wind this up. What I want to say is I find on almost everything we deal with that we have goals that bump into each other. And that you have to kind of wrestle your way through, because there's a plus of wanting to do this, and there's a plus of wanting to do this, and they may come into conflict with each other. So that's kind of the tension. It's like the triple bottom line tensions. They exist. We have to work on them. What I heard people say today is, and I think you've probably written it down, but there's some around the housing issues. There's some desire for hearing more from you in the future about that, around what the core is, right, and density, and the inclusionary zoning issue too. There were probably some more, but those are ones that I heard kind of put out there for you all to think about what you might want to talk to us more about those issues.
And I think, I don't know if, I feel like I heard this throughout a number of comments, maybe more specificity on affordability, and many people call this out in different ways, right, so that as well.
The other thing I was thinking about too is that the fear of everybody about Envision Eugene is that you will go to all this effort and then we'll finish doing it and you'll say that is really nice and put it on our shelf. And so I think the other piece to this is the Eugene Counts kind of thing, where we actually put measurement in place to say We agree that we want to see how we're doing on these things, so how are we doing on them? And we go back and look at them, and we actually kind of measure how we're doing, or find out that what we've been doing didn't work out the way we thought it was going to work out. So I think maybe one of the other piece to the goals we set for ourselves is the thing that comes from the other end that says, how are those being used on the ground, and how is that playing out? And I think that's what I heard you referring to, too. And I think that's the other piece of what we have to put together, so this becomes sort of a living thing that we're working on all the time. So
If there was a single thing I think there was consensus about in the community resource group, it was not putting this plan on the shelf and
Right.
having a way for the community to see whether their decisions made a difference in relatively short time period.
And it's a way to teach people, too, because if
Oh, yeah.
you know what you're aiming for and you see how you're doing on them, and you've got an iterative conversation with your public about what you're trying to accomplish. Mike, I don't want to cut you off here, so very, very quickly, if you have one more thing, you okay? All right, with that, I'll just say thank you. That was an all too short conversation, but a really good one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, good work. I want it noted for the record, though, that I gave up the chance.
You did. You know what, I could
You were first.
I could keep a scoreboard.
Would you? Do I get to keep score?
No, that's my job.
Well, we'll see how that goes.
That's awesome.
I don't know. What do I mean?
That's totally awesome. Did you hear that? Did you hear that gauntlet being thrown there?
Oh, my goodness. I'm the city
Men in
administrator.
black today.
Tighter to take today.
Yeah, a little bit.
Me and Johnny Cash.
Boots?
Okay, switching gears. We're going to talk about the Arts and Business Alliance. The manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll turn it over to Renee and the rest of her team here.
All right, thank you. So, where'd everybody go? We're gone. That is not a good sign.
Apparently they were hungry or something. I don't know.
All right, we're going to celebrate some achievements today, which we don't do very often. And today's focus is on the Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene. And I'm Renee Gruby, the Executive Director of the Library, Recreation, and Cultural Services Department. And I'd also like to introduce Alan Evans, who's to my right, who is the Chair of the Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene, and Billy Mosier, who is the Community Events Manager for the city, who's going to show you a really exciting project that the Arts and Business Alliance has been working on. But before we get there, which is really what we want to show you, but I want to give you just a quick history. When we completed the cultural policy review in 2007, we promised again that we would not let it sit on the shelf. To that end, we identified a number of things that we really wanted to achieve, and one of those was creation of an alliance that could strengthen the art and culture sector in our community and also foster higher level of civic leadership. So the thing that we thought would do that the quickest and most effectively was the creation of an Arts and Business Alliance. Team of folks that we put together after the cultural policy review was completed, identified a number of really best practices in other communities that were around the nation that were relying on arts and business partnerships to generate a lot of things that we think our community was needing. One, economic development, livability in our community, creativity and innovation, and also drawing creative employees for businesses that provide a more diverse pool of individuals for our community to, live here and create opportunities. So out of that came the Arts and Business Alliance, because we know the arts need businesses and business needs the arts. The City of Eugene, University of Oregon, Lane Community College, Travel County, and the Eugene Chamber of Commerce said that is something that we all value very much, and we want to champion the cause. So those 5 organizations are the core organizations that came together in a memorandum of understanding, which doesn't happen every day, with 5 key partners in this community to say this is something we want to put our resources to and efforts. So that's kind of the history. As I said, Alan is the chair of the Arts and Business Alliance, and without his initiative, I think we would probably still be talking about what are our next steps. He has been a real champion for this, has made connections that have allowed us to get to a point where we're going to show you some of the products. In your AIS, you'll see the goals of the Arts and Business Alliance. I'm not going to go over those, but we also included a 5-year business plan where you can see through those goals what we're trying to achieve to accomplish them. A few other key highlights. Under the interest of increased awareness in the community, we've established a biannual event called the Brava Breakfast, which is the business recognizing arts, vision, and achievement. Two different times of the year. In the spring, the focus is on arts and business partnerships. And if you have your calendar out, put June 3rd on your calendar. It's coming up. It was a Friday morning. And then in the fall, we'll have another event, and these will happen every year, that will talk about inspiring, engaging, and educating the community about the value of art and business partnerships. Another really key thing that's happening in our community is Eugene was selected as a community by the Americans for the Arts to participate in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study, which is the 4th rendition, which means we'll have data that talks about the impact of private or nonprofit arts and culture organizations, their impact on our economy in Eugene, and also on the impact that their audience has on our economy in Eugene, which is really important because we've never had local data. We've had data from Portland, we've had national data to talk about what it does for us, but we've never had specific to Eugene data. So that's a really great thing. Arts and Business Alliance, the City of Eugene, and the University of Oregon's Community Arts and Cultural Policy Program Center are partners in that. And then something you're going to hear about that we're beginning work on is a downtown art and culture district. We've all recognized for a long time that we have a really abundance of art, entertainment, culture in our downtown, more than any of us really know. And we know it's something that the community can be proud of and something that we should capitalize on. We also know that the downtown and an arts and business district could stimulate economic development downtown, which is another one of our key goals for the Arts and Business Alliance. So you'll hear more about that as we go. We're in the beginning stages of defining what that might look like, planning for how we might involve the city and other business partners and the ABAE. But today, Billy is going to talk to you about Eugene A Go-Go. For the past 30 years, at least, we've been talking about how do we communicate in the community about what's going on without having to go to 15 different places to find it. People have talked about it as an online calendar, but we see what we've done as a online arts and culture community. And it's unlike anything that we've been able to find anywhere, and it's very dynamic, something that we didn't think we could ever achieve, but we wanted it to be the first thing that we could accomplish. Thanks to the Oregon Community Foundation, with a significant funding piece, we're able to show you what is now in soft launch and will be launched hard in a couple months, right? Or another month?
Yeah, we're 3 to 6 weeks is what we're saying right now.
So to just try and turn it over to Billy here, because she's going to walk you through. You can see what we've got going. So Billy Mosier and Tina Rinaldi from the university have spent untold hours working on this and should be commended for their efforts. So when you see this, think of Billy.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for taking time to hear about the Arts and Business Alliance, and I too want to thank Alan Evans, who we wouldn't be where we are. So well said. Thanks, Renee. And also thank you to Renee, who has been the liaison from community events to ABAE, and also we wouldn't be where we are without Renee. This is super exciting and truly unique, and I'll show you why today, because the only way you can actually, you have to see it to believe it. That's what I think. And the most a real fabulous thing is that it's all free to the user. So keep that in mind. Anybody can use this. There's no charge, thanks to ABAE. The specific goals, when we started out, after, as Renee said, we looked for probably a year and a half. We wanted to purchase something off the shelf if we could, and we looked all over the United States to see if we could find a platform that would meet our goals, and we could not find it. There were 2 or 3 that we checked out, did a lot of work around it, and it simply wasn't what we wanted. We needed something more. So we went and said, okay, we're going to do it ourselves. So to start out, we came up with our goals. And so when I talk about this, these are the goals that we, the project team, told ourselves every single day in the planning stages, and still are. And a lot of them are coming straight out of the cultural policy review that Renee has there. It's my desk copy, and as you can see, I use it every day, and I have sticky notes all over. And so a lot of these goals came straight from there. Number 1, we wanted to make the unseen seen. We think there are 100+ arts organizations and over 1,000 artists here. That's what we found out when we did the cultural policy review. We wanted to show them all. We wanted to give them a place to be seen. We wanted to level the online playing field. We wanted a place where everybody, the artists and the producers, could be out there and have equal space on these pictures, what you see there. And make it free, so they could be there. We wanted to strengthen existing arts audiences, and that's primarily done through what you will see in a little bit, the social media aspect. On the lower left, the featured people. So existing audience will be strengthened, is already being strengthened through this section. We wanted to increase audience participation. Of course, we need more audience participation, and we knew that we would be able to do it through this site by just doing a little bit of what Amazon does so well. You know, I like this, you will also like this. And just putting it all out there for people to see what they could choose from, and therefore growing up with it. And most important of all, we wanted to serve the arts community. So that's what we're saying. This is not a website. It is a website, but it's so much more than a website. It's an online arts community that offers many, many resources, and one of the main resources, of course, is the comprehensive event calendar. But it's not just an event calendar. It is so much more. So as Renee said, we are in soft launch. And so when you start seeing some things, we're still working on it, but we are thinking, as of this morning, that we will probably launch publicly in 3 to 6 weeks. But right now, we have been in soft launch with a primary push only to arts organizations. It started only with arts organizations 6 weeks ago, so March 8th. And since then, we have, as of this morning, I looked just before I came over, 293 members, right there, 293 members. Venues, as you can see right there, as of this morning, we have 101 venues registered. They loaded their content. And featured, where you see this featured artist section here, we have, as of this morning, 131 artists. That's, of course, individual artists, arts organizations, arts groups. You know, the entire symphony is an artist, and every individual musician in the symphony can be an artist, is an artist. So wanted to give you some of those numbers, and very exciting, of course, is the events piece. And as of this morning, 206 events. Of those 206 events, 120 are in the future, because obviously the database counts everything. So I wanted you to know that since March 8th, 206 events have been loaded, 120 in the future. And I also wanted to point out that that is individual events, not necessarily showings. So as an example, Wicked, which opens today, is one event and has 16 showings, the biggest show ever at the Holt Center and probably the City of Eugene, but it is only counted as one. So we're counting the event, not the showing. So if you think about that, this 206 is really much larger. But we wanted to count in a very, in this way. So I do also want to point out, since we are in soft launch, there are duplications out there. And if you were to go on and start looking around, you will see that. But we are aware of those, and we are working on that. We have said the word unique a few times. Well, what makes this truly unique? Well, as I said, we looked around and we couldn't find anything. So we just know that. We couldn't find anything that's like this. And the big piece is that the social media aspect, these social media components that I'll show you here, the featured people, featured venue, featured artist, that's all social media network, that component. And that does not exist, to our knowledge, right now anywhere in the United States. All the databases, and there are the events, the people, the members, the venue, and the artists. So there's 4. They're all relational, and all are connected, and all work together with the social media aspect. So that is truly unique. The engage section. So up here on the navigation bar, here are the events, venues, artists, engage. This engage section is truly about engaging any audience member any way they want to engage more, above and beyond watching a performance or watching a picture or, visual arts. This is about engaging through volunteer opportunities, obviously classes, fundraisers, all of that. So this engage section is truly unique. We could not find it. We started from ground zero on that. And then another thing that you can't necessarily see, but the comprehensive events calendar, when you create an event and then submit the event, you click here and then you start going through it and you create an event and then you submit. You click the submit button at the end. Yes, I want to submit. A pop-up window comes up and it says, would you like your event to also be posted to these other calendars? This came out, we heard that loud and clear through the 2007 Cultural Policy Review. And so what we have done in phase 1, we're working with the Eugene Weekly, KLCC, and Travel Lane County and their calendars to make that happen. So when somebody submits here on Eugene Go and then click that button, and yes, I want it to go to the Eugene Weekly, I want it to go to KLCC, it automatically sends it over to them. It is very, very complex. We have not figured it all out, I want you to know. We're working really hard on it, but we know that makes it truly unique and is a huge benefit to our customers, all the users. But we know that KLCC, Eugene Weekly, and Travel Lane County are trusted sources for arts and culture currently in the marketplace. So we want to make sure that we're all doing the same thing and not, wasting our time and energies. So those are the 3 items that we feel are truly unique. So I wanted to show you. So you're a patron. You're a patron. You want to know what's going on in the arts and, what's going on. You want to go to an event. So you come to eugeneagogo.com, and you do not need to be a member. You just want to see what's going on. You can do that through, obviously, right here, events, because you want to see a movie. You want to see an art movie. You can go directly to the events and click on art movie, and I believe there's nothing there right now, but we'll work on that as well. But you can go to what you really want to do, because this is about you, it's all about you. You want to find what you are interested in. So you can go, because you want to see some live music, and then you go to music, and then you can choose from right there to jazz. You want to see some jazz, you go to jazz, and you click on jazz, and you will find out what's going on right now in the community on jazz. Or I can't get the mouse to go there. Okay, now it's, there is, we have 206 events in there, so there's definitely things in there. So right now, in regards to jazz in our community, there are these events going on. There's the Duke Ellington birthday celebration today at Bell Concert Hall, and you can buy tickets from right here. This, of course, clicks directly to their ticket engine. We are not selling tickets. We're just giving you the opportunity to go to buy tickets from their engine, and so on. So I encourage you to go around and look at it. But so you can find your event this way. But you can also say, oh, well, I really want to go I really like the Holt Center, and I want to find out what's going on at the Holt Center. You want to find your event through the venue section, and you, of course, can do that. And here you have performing arts venues, restaurants, bars, outdoor, so all of our parks, of course, galleries, stores, bookstores, museums, and so on. So you can find your event through the venues. All of that is, as I said earlier, relational, these databases, and you can find it that way. And another way, of course, I'm going to go back to the home page, but you can access it from any page, is the lower third of every page. On the home page, there is a calendar on the right-hand side. Okay, I'm trying to get back. And down here, this is the lower third. We are right now have 2 blocks coming in. Here's some sponsor space, and this calendar here, from here you can go to any specific date, and today's date, of course, is the 20th, therefore it is highlighted. But you can find, if you just, you have somebody coming to town on this date, you can go to that date through that calendar at any page, anywhere in this online community. So those are the ways you can access this as a patron. So I'm a venue. Right? I have a venue. I have a bookstore, and I want to be part of it as a venue. I can go to the venue page that we were on earlier. We go up here. You see this mega drop-down, we call them, that immediately makes the unseen seen. Immediately you see everything that's going on, or, not everything, but you have a good idea. I go to create a venue, and I can load myself here under create a venue. And then I can start being part of the featured venue. And it's all networked, because if you at your venue, at your bookstore, you have a reading, and that reading is then also loaded as an event, and that event is coming up, you will see your high-resolution picture up here in this rotation on the top, and your venue will probably start showing up as a featured venue. And if the person that gives the reading is also loaded as an artist, or that featured artist is also in Eugenia Go-Go, that featured artist will start rotating up through that section as well, because it's all relational. So as a venue, I can be part of this site through many different ways. I'm an artist, and just so you know, we've had immense response from artists, especially individual artists and a lot of visual artists, which is truly exciting, because it's just so wonderful. Every time we see a new one, we're all excited because we didn't know anything about them. Make the unseen seen. So as an artist, you can be part of that right here. We have dance, musician, literary, theatrical, visual, but the other thing we did is we added a whole section, as you can see right here, for professional artist professions, I should say. So everything from arrangers, artistic directors, and arts managers, conductors, and so on, and they can be part of this site through their profession this way. And so, for example, I have loaded myself as an arts manager. And as an arts manager, we program some in the city downtown. Of course, that will be super exciting again this year. And I will be looking for artists through that site in the future. As an arts manager, we'll be looking through that. So that's how artists can participate, and really we have heard from artists that they have felt the pressure for quite a while that they needed their own website, and now that we have that, they will not be doing their own website. They will just be using Eugenia Go-Go as their community. So I thought we should log in, and I'll just show you that real quick, as a member, because we are all we are all interested people in the arts community, and so if you want to engage further than just looking what's going on, and you really want to know more stuff, you want to follow events, you want to know, well, I really like certain things, and I want to follow those artists or those venues, I can do that as a member. So I'm going to, I can't sign myself in necessarily right now.
The keyboard, you can try.
Okay, yeah. And I'll show you just on myself on how all of this is connected, so you can really see what it looks like. And then we encourage you to do that as well.
While you're doing that right now, is there an opportunity if people want, since this is funded through some one-time monies, it sounded like, are you going to give people opportunities to donate?
Yes, absolutely. The APAE has developed a plan, and since you asked, I have to show you that under About, we have a section right there for sponsors and support, and under there, I believe it's right here, and we are still making this a little bit better. We are renaming some of these words to be more recognizable. But under Media Kit, which is going to start being called Sponsorship Kit, there is a 4-page way of how you can be a sponsor.
Who's hosting this?
Concentric Sky. Concentric Sky is the developer, Asbury Design, the designer, and Bell & Funk, the marketing launch. So I'm going to sign in. I'm BMO. Oh, sorry.
Disappointed in you,
You going to show us your password?
It's not gonna, yeah. Maybe we can.
Click the cursor.
Click the cursor, sorry. Is it going? Yeah. I'm BMO.
Okay, everybody divert your eyes. Don't look at the password.
It's not, it doesn't show.
I'm sure the camera won't carry it, yeah.
Dot, dot, dot.
Did that take? I don't think it, oh yeah, sign, I'm in now. Okay, so now I'm going to my account. And this is a little bit like Facebook. Of course, Facebook is very sophisticated. They have done this for a long time. But it is definitely similar, but it is not a Facebook. But here I am. And on the left-hand side, I can check my messages. I can befriend and have friends in the network. I can follow, especially events and venues. And right through here is what I wanted to show you. This is the Amazon type effect. But under preferences, if you go there, when you log in, you can choose what you want to, what you're interested in. So I'm interested in dance, ballet, and contemporary. And then what it does, on the right-hand side, it gives you your event recommendations. This now tells me everything that I prefer to see, and it tells me right there what I should go see. I think that's really nifty, so that's why I have to show it to you. And then I just wanted to show you, as an arts manager, what that looks like. Because, as I mentioned, it is truly unique. And so I'm there as an arts manager. I hope I'll get there. There I am, Billy Moser. Right now there's only 2 arts managers there, so we have to do some more outreach. But as you can see, I have loaded 1 event. I have 3 followers. I think they're my best friends. And
after today.
yeah. So here I am. This is just I wanted to show you. I can load up to 6 pictures up here as an arts manager, and I obviously will be marketing some in the city events through here as well. And right now I have loaded one. That's the drawing marathon. And there's, of course, it's connected. And as you can see, it's on the 27th. And here is the information at a glance. And as you can see, I also have loaded some engage opportunities. I'm looking for volunteers. So you can see I have everything in one place. And so therefore it's also easy for people to follow either the events or myself or the venue, Kesey Square, Broadway Plaza, and they can all engage this way. So that's how that is done. I just thought you might be interested in that. The next steps are absolutely to get to public launch, 3 to 6 weeks. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're working really hard, and so are our contractors. I did want to let you know that we do have a complete marketing plan for the public launch, and we have strategically chosen the 18 to 35-year-olds who we will be going after first, because they are the social media, very, very active in social media, so we wanted to go to them first. And we have already created buzz cards, and the buzz cards look like this, but on the back side we have QR codes that are accessible, obviously, through, you have to have the app for it, but it takes you right to Eugenia Gogo. And I also just brought the coaster that we've already produced, and I want to keep in mind, this is for the 18 to 35-year-olds, but this is our marketing to the 18 to 35-year-olds. These will be in the nightclubs and bars and, the 18 to 35 target. And it says, ever wonder what would happen if the flaming lips and the conjugal visitors played together at Sweet Cheeks? That's our advertising strategy. And on the back of the coaster, we're asking them to give us their ideas on what this should look like. So
you want to say
constant
who those-
engagement.
who
They
those-
are,
I know what they
they
are.
are
I know what
bands in town. They are quite. There are two bands, two local bands, and Sweet Cheeks is a winery, is a venue. So that obviously, as I said, keep in mind this is the 18 to 35-year-olds, and then we have obviously something else going on for
Know
mine.
what's going on, but some of us do. Betty's all on it.
Yeah. So that's just a little example of that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
You
very
get
much.
enthusiastic, Billy.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
you got to learn to show some enthusiasm.
I'm just a little disappointed that Renee couldn't find anybody that's got a little enthusiasm for
Really?
this
Right.
project.
No, we want to thank you, actually, very seriously, but enthusiastically. Thank you for the presentation and the work you've all done. This is exciting and really fun to
Yes.
see happening, and very innovative on your part, I think. And
I just signed up.
already.
I'm
all
about
right.
to, yeah.
That's great. Betty, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, and this is one of the best things the city is doing at the moment. I think it's really wonderful, and good job. It's a thing that, part of this is something that I've found lacking ever since I came here, which was a calendar of events, where I used to live you could go to the library and find out if something was going on, but there's so much more here, and you've done such a good job of making it accessible. I think that was really great. Do you have the jazz club on there when you were at jazz?
Yes.
I wondered if you were going that far.
The jazz station is already.
Station, yeah.
Yes, it is
So-
there. It is already a venue, and they've posted events.
It's great. Now, how does one get to all those things? How do you find time for it? Oh, I do have a question. Do you take
18 to 25.
35? She said. So you can go.
Thank you. Corrected by the English teacher.
When something's over, do you take it down?
Yes, absolutely. It does go in the past, and we found quite a few things this morning. So those are still the kinks we're working out.
Okay, thank you. It's really great.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, as I was watching you do this in the social networking piece, I was thinking that maybe that's a tool that we can use for the Arts and Cultural District, that you can, in some ways, help assemble the actual live district through using your Arts A Go-Go tool by inviting people within whatever area you're talking about to become in conversation with. It just might be one of those ways of getting people that might not normally select themselves as part of the district to select themselves to be part of it within the area that you choose to have it be. It just might be an interesting way to go about that, because people really do. A lot of people know how to use that kind of tool to get engaged in things that they might not otherwise. So, Pat?
I am just a little curious. The signing up seems to be pretty wide open. Sign up as an artist, sign up as a venue, for instance. You have no restrictions on that, so pretty much anybody can sign up
Yes.
any way they wish.
Absolutely. What's also built in is a flag. So if we see something that's inappropriate, it doesn't fit, anybody can flag it, and then on the backside it shows up as a flag, and then we check it out. And another thing that's built in is a badge system. So the more active you are, the more badges you can earn, which means you become more and more respected. And that means that you might then get permission to do some of this work. You can say, oh yeah, this is really not right, I'm going to take you off.
Gotcha.
And that really is about engaging in self-management.
That's good. Thank you.
You know, this is a fantastic tool. It's a long time coming. It's like a dream come true for you, I'm sure. How does it get maintained?
Yes, actually, thanks to Ellen and the Arts and Business Alliance, we now do have somebody working on it 20 hours a week to help us, especially right now through the soft launch. And then these two tools that I just mentioned, the flagging system and the badge system, helps us to self-maintain to a large part. There will always be some work that has to be done by us. At the same time, we wanted to set it up to keep engaging and to keep the labor down.
So you have room for lots of volunteers, right?
Yes.
We recognize there's going to be maintenance as we go beyond what any self-maintenance will do. And we do have plans, because it is such a unique product, of actually franchising it, licensing it for us to actually make available to other communities for a fee. We don't have that. We don't have that quite nailed down yet, but that'll help us down the road.
So we're not buying a license from Concentric Sky on this. This is a Eugene product they helped develop, and we would have the...
The Arts and Business Alliance owns it.
ABAE.
ABA owns it.
And that's a nonprofit.
So they're essentially the developer on this, and they've just got it. All right.
Are they, is
501c3?
501?
No. No, it's a partnership between the 5 organizations that I
That's smart.
talked about.
The Oregon Community Foundation is serving as the Arts and Business Alliance's fiscal agent.
Right.
And they have 501c3
Status.
status.
Yeah.
And they've been extremely supportive of our efforts. And I'd also like to mention that, one of the strengths of this partnership is the partnership itself. I mean, all the partner groups, the U of O, the Chamber, Travel Lane County, and Lane Community College, as well as the city. Billy's put in countless hours, and they've all put in a lot of time, staff support, and they all contribute financially. We see this long-term as a way to raise revenue through licensing.
Sure. Smart.
Well, everybody else, I think we appreciate the role each of you has, and I know the city manager serves on the ABAE too, so everybody's working on this. And it's really exciting for me to see this growth happening from where we talked about being the great city and are actually actively working on being the great city for arts and the outdoors. So appreciate it very much, and I think we all commend you for the steps that have been taken, and look forward to seeing this roll out and continue rolling. So I'll just give you a hand because I think you did such a great job.
Great. One more thing before we leave. The Chamber is a partner, and they did the Open for Business magazine on the Arts and Business Alliance
When you're
efforts.
on the cover.
Yeah, Alan and I are kind of...
Yeah. Thus, you're sending it out.
You're signing those.
Stick around, she'll be signing autographs.
No, Alan will. No, we're passing it out
Best of luck, Renee.
irregardless of the fact that we're on here. Because if you open it up, you'll see a lot of good information.
Sorry.
So if you can look past the... Alan and I have received a little bit of ribbing from our family, friends, colleagues, so...
So who wears the go-go boots is what I want.
But inside, it lists all the ABAE steering committee members, as well as really talks about some of the other initiatives that are going on, so...
Got one of these. Did you mail some out or something?
We didn't mail them if you're a member of the chamber.
Sometimes they get distributed through the office sometimes, and you might have picked them up in other
No,
places.
I got one in the mail.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I think
I did.
You play this?
Cool picture, Alan.
You play this?
There was one in the
No,
closet.
someone said that it looked like I was actually carrying it like a weapon. But,
I've got one on my desk.
yeah.
I'm gonna take 2.
We're on the go. That's
great.
the idea there.
Good. That's good. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, sir.